So, looking at the interviewing side of the job hunt process, we want, an interview is going to be like this. This is how you're actually going to procure your job, because you could have the greatest resume in the world, the greatest like cover letter in the world, but we do want to make sure that we are also nailing our interview, because if we don't, it's going to be very difficult for our employer to know sort of what they're getting. And then when it comes down to their decision, they're like, well, I'm going to go with a known quantity instead of an unknown quantity, right? Like a lot of times, like people think people get very nervous during interviews. People get very nervous about going to an interview. They get really like anxious because it kind of feels, when you are going into a situation where somebody's going to ask you a lot of questions, it just kind of feels like you are I don't know, not being attacked, but like it feels like you're playing defense in a way, but that's not really how you want to see your interview. Like it may feel that way, but there's a couple things that if you remember will give you confidence. Number one, this interviewer wants to fill this position. They want nothing more than an interrogation. That's perfect. Yeah, it feels like an interrogation. It's kind of like like when a police officer like asks you a question, you haven't been doing anything illegal at all, but you're just like, I don't know, maybe I'm a criminal. It just makes you feel as if like you're very nervous because this is like a person in like some version of authority and stuff. Mike Birbiglia has a really great joke where he's talking about how like when you're driving and you drive past a police officer and you're not doing anything wrong, you're not speeding, your seatbelt's on, it's all normal, but you just have that thought that goes into your brain where you're like, oh, I hope he doesn't notice that I'm driving, like nothing's wrong, but you're just nervous and that's kind of how people are in like an interview. But if you remember the fact that like this person is desperate to hire you, like they want nothing more than to get this position filled so that they can like move on with their life. I think I said this yesterday, but like it sucks hiring people. It eats up your whole day. You have to do like a bunch of like content. You got to call people and like, follow up with them as you set up like the next interview, right? Like we want this process over with for the most part. So like they are desperate to hire you guys, which really puts the power kind of back in your hands. Even though they're going to be asking you a series of questions, you always just want to kind of keep focused on steering the interview in the direction that you want it to go, So like for me, for instance, I really like to throw like a couple curveballs during interviews. And we'll talk a little bit about this as we go through things. But a lot of times when like I'm answering questions, I try to be as personable as possible and likable. And I focus more on that than I do on then I focus on like my skill set. My skill set is all listed on paper. Then when I ask me questions about it, I can answer it very easily and honestly. All of that information is kind of like laid out already. What the employer doesn't know is whether or not they're going to enjoy working with me 8 hours a day, or if they are going to be leaving their clients in the best hands capable, right? So that's really the kind of stuff that I want to show off in an interview, right? So it's the means by which you're actually going to sort of procure your job, right? And this, I think, is the sentence. I think this is I think this sentence here is so clunky, it sounds like a homework sentence. It facilitates the exchange of information related to the job between the employer and the candidate. So it is like our opportunity to, yes, trade information, right? So this is going to give the employer an opportunity to assess your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities, your KSAs, and determine, if you have like the right knowledge base to work in whatever job it's going to be, the right skills, meaning that like, have you worked with people in this population before, and abilities, meaning like a little bit more in the sort of intangible side of things, which is like, are you personable? Do they think you're going to like do a good job in the sales? Like, it's the gut feeling stuff. at the end there. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So remember that like when we talk about resumes, we already kind of talked about resumes yesterday. So, we'll move through this quickly, but the most effective resumes are always the ones that like focus on a specific job title. This is why like we put personal trainer, group exercise instructor, right? Or like general manager, like if that's what you're applying for. Me, I always like the term program director because I usually end up working in a place that, is usually like a multi-tiered situation. Like Sochi, for instance, has massage and it has, PTA and all the other ones as well. So like that's different programs. So like program director sort of describes a little bit more. Not this. I mean, it's the same. It'd be essentially the same as like a manager, but like that title in particular is sort of what I aim for because I know that like the places I apply often have different departments. Physical therapy clinic would have a training department, the resort that I worked at had a training department and it had a hiking department and it had an operations department, you know what I mean? So I use that title in particular, but whatever title you think is going to be most effective, for those of you who maybe maybe the personal training is something you want to do on the side, and you're more of a yoga instructor. And so if you would have like a resume that is very like much yoga specific. Know about the duties, know about the skills for the position, and try to like fill those out on your resume as much as possible. But we've already kind of talked about that. Get a clear objective, list your education, list your experience, including relevant and non-relevant. Don't put your references on your resume, and you don't have to put that sentence, references available upon request. I think we talked about that in the evening class yesterday, but we didn't mention it in the morning. You don't have to put that on your resume at this point, at least, because like everybody's been doing that for 50 years, and we know that the references are available upon request. Don't use your family as references, and then watch your grammar and spelling errors. Watch for typos. I definitely had one you guys might have noticed that for the morning crew here, the Tom Cruise resume changed just a little bit in the evening session because I noticed I had like a little typo in there or like a sentence that was just a little clunkier than I ended up wanting it to be. And that's what happens. You also want to proofread your resume a bajillion times before you ever send it out. Give it to your friends, have them look at it and analyze and stuff. So let's say you get your resume out there, you get your application out there, they're impressed, they're excited, they want to bring you in because they're, again, desperate to hire you. Well, let's go ahead and talk about like preparing for this interview. So there's a couple things you can do that will also give you some confidence and make it a lot easier. To feel more comfortable during your interview. First is like you want to make sure that you're keyed in on all the details, right? So like you want to know about like where you're going to interview, like what the location is. Honestly, guys, make sure that like you are planning your trip. I mean, friggin' Google has a new, I don't know how new it is. Oop. Speaking of new and grown, if you go to like maps, if I had an interview, let's say at the, my address there, and then like if I had an interview at like the LA Athletic Club, right now it's going to say, okay, that's a 38-minute drive, right? So I mapped that out. But like, what if my interview is at 2 p.m.? Well, guess what? I can go freaking here and just change this. Like, I want to arrive by, 1:45 p.m. Hey, not 1:45 a.m. Are you kidding me? That is so annoying. There we go. Which means that like I probably want to leave around 12:50, right? So now it gave me like that's longer than 42 minutes. Actually, I guess Yeah, no, that's way longer than 42 minutes, right? So that is assuming the worst. And that's great. That's a really, helpful tool that helps me map out my trip. That is something you should absolutely be doing when you're preparing for your interview, right? So like, make sure that you're arranging and like knowing exactly like where you're going, where you're going to park. That's a big one. If you're emailing back and forth with this potential employer, ask them if there's like validation or anything like that. Most of the time, most of the time they will have taken care of all of this for you. Like this information will all be presented to you directly. Because like you're not the first person they've ever interviewed. They're going to remember. It's like, okay, great. We've got your interview set up for Tuesday at 9. Here's the address. You're going to park on the 3rd floor because that's our area. They'll like fill you in on all that for the most part. But if they don't, you want to ask any of those questions. And that actually kind of helps you seem like you are also a little bit more prepared, which is sort of like a pre-interview situation that kind of helps you out during the sort of traditional interview situation. So make sure that you're doing as much research as possible. Get on the website, learn about the company's mission statement. You want to make sure that you know about the organization itself, and you want to know about like what position you're applying for. So if you go back to, let's say we go to Indeed over here, and we're looking for personal trainer. At Ultimate Performance. I don't know what that is, but I'm probably going to read this application 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times until like I really like fully understand it, and I make sure that I know everything. I'm probably going to go to their website. Let's see here. Ultimate Performance Gym, Los Angeles. That's these guys. So, I'm probably going to look at this personal training tab and I'm going to figure out like what it is that they're doing here. What do they have access to? What kind of stuff can I incorporate? Looks like they're talking about like dietary stuff sometimes as well, and I'm really, wow, this is a huge page. Oh, interesting. So yeah, I want to know, I want to know everything there is to know about this company before I go in. So do your research on the agency, right? Know a little bit about like who it is, who is hiring you, before you go in. So for instance, a good example of that, when I was interviewing for my job at Biggest Loser, one of the reasons I got that job was because a friend of mine was working as their dietitian. And I was like, who do you think I'm going to be like interviewing with? And she was like, oh, you're going to interview with this person, Michaela. And she's really sweet. She's from the Midwest. She loves dogs. And I was like, great. That's fun to know. Loves dogs, and I like logged that information away. And sure enough, during the interview, I steered the conversation just a little bit and talked a little bit about dogs for a second. She's clearly like an animal lover. And so like brought that up, and it just made me again like very friendly and very personable, which in that job in particular was very, very important because it was a resort, right? Like the idea is that like people are going to be coming and getting their butt kicked by personal trainers all freaking day. They want to make sure those trainers are in a good mood so they can keep the guests in a good mood. So in that job in particular, I wanted to know all of the sort of like stuff that was fun to know, So if it's possible, it is wise for you guys to know a little bit about the people that you're interviewing. You're not always going to be able to know that, but even if you're able to just get on their website and you find like a landing page for whatever training manager that is probably in charge of the hiring process, read their like biography in their background. If they're like, it says something about how like they used to be a semi-pro MMA fighter before switching more to like fitness. And it's like, oh, well, I know a lot about MMA. I love watching UFC. Great. Maybe that's something you can talk about during your interview, but doing your research is not only just helpful, but even if like let's say you get, and I'm going to use the word here, but I don't mean it. If you get caught, if they're like, you read my profile, didn't you? Like if the manager's like, this seems like the conversation steered a little bit too accurately, right? Even if they notice that, they're not going to think like, what an invasion of my privacy. No, they're going to go, wow, this person is resourceful and like does their research and I'm into it. Let's go, you know? So knowing a little bit about like, your interviewer is really, really, really important there. Know what your commute is. Again, this is Los Angeles, guys. I'm going to quote this right now. I have not met this new person, Alana from Crunch. I do not know who that is. I haven't talked to them before. I have no idea who Crunch is sending. But I'm going to quote this right now. And I'm going to say, if anybody asks the question, when we meet up and we meet these people and they're talking to us, if anybody asks the question, what's the one most important thing to prepare for like an interview at Crunch, I guarantee you their answer will be at least somewhere in there. Maybe it won't be their first answer, but they'll say, show up on time. I've heard every interviewer that's come through Sochi say that every single time. Like all of them, which means these are all people who have hired other people before. It means that they're saying it because they're rooting for you, and they're saying it because they have probably interviewed so many people over the years who have not shown up dressed the way they are supposed, or showed up on time. Sorry, I was reading. Yeah, George, we're going to talk about what to wear in just a bit. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. But yeah, they've had tons, and I've had it. I've had people just show up late all the freaking time for their interviews, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, you're trying to make a good first impression. We've never met before. The first, like I called you in. The first thing that I think, the first thing that I think when somebody walks through the door late is it was like, that was your first impression with me. That, and then one other time, speaking of dress code, we'll come back to this in a minute, but I had a guy one time show up in like a full like ride his bike through traffic. Like, it looks like he was doing like a Thanksgiving Day, 50K bike ride or something. This guy just like showed up with like all the like spandex and I was like, really? Like, I was like, I'm not knocking you for riding your bike to an interview, but like, you didn't like want to go have a change of clothes in the bathroom or something. I was like, what? Anyway, so we'll talk about what to wear as well. But yeah, know a little bit about what your commute is, guys. You don't want to end up like showing up on time, but then run into like a parking situation that delays you for 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden you're late for your interview. So next thing you want to do, you do want to make sure you are doing a self-assessment. Guys, take the time to like ask yourself like what is going to make you unique as a personal trainer, what your knowledge, what your strengths are. And yeah, you're probably going to get that question in your interview that is like, what is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? I personally hate that question and have never asked it in an interview ever, because I think it's a cliche and cheesy. But like, you will probably get that question because I've had that question plenty of times. But knowing about your strengths, knowing about your weaknesses, that is a big deal. By the way, if you do want and when it comes to answering that, what is your greatest weakness question, answer it honestly. That is honestly like I think what they're looking for. I think the reason most people ask that question is they are trying to see if somebody squirms a little bit under pressure, because most people don't want to. So what you don't want to do is like give yourself the humble brag and be like, oh, I'm too punctual, right? Or I'm too friendly to people, right? Like, you don't want to say like things that are clearly just like you trying to like hack the question. Just answer it honestly, my greatest weakness I always talk about in interviews is like, I'm easily distracted. A lot of times I will be very laser focused and then something will catch my eye and I'll be like, squirrel, and now I'm struggling to like maintain my focus. So I'll talk about that in interviews freely, very easily and quickly, without feeling too awkward about it, because at least that version of that is not really going to stop me from being a very good personal trainer. If I was if I was applying for a job as like an air traffic control person at LAX, maybe that's not the greatest weakness that I would list out, but I don't want that job anyways. So do a self-assessment, figure out what your strengths are, figure out what your weaknesses are. Talk about your experience, you know, like how is your experience going to be relevant? Get those sentences in your head, you know? Like when I think about like telling like my story of how I became like a personal trainer, it's very easy for me, you know? I've sort of practiced the same story every time. So somebody says like, how'd you get into training? I always say the same thing. It's like, honestly, I got into it for very selfish reasons. I got into it because, you know, I came out to Los Angeles because I thought I wanted to do like the acting thing, which I only did for like 6 months, and was like, oh, nope, this is not for me even a little. But you know, I got the training degree on the side because like I was like, that's a good way to like make a good living while also like staying in really good shape, while also ensuring that like I am in charge of my own hours. I like the idea of like being in charge of my schedule and things like that. That's very important to me. But I turned out like I was planning on like canceling appointments to go to training sessions. But then what ended up happening more often than not is that I noticed that I was canceling auditions to go to training sessions instead. I was doing literally the opposite of what I thought I was going to do when I got into the personal training industry. And then, you know, as I started focusing more on corrective exercise, I started to realize that like I get, you know, really excited when I make people's aches and pains go away and I make them feel better. I started noticing that like that was more important to me. And that's the day that I kind of realized I was like, oh, like I was never meant to be an actor. Like I kind of fell into this thing that I happen to be extremely passionate about in the end. So, you know, that's a story that I've told a million times. You know, is like how I became like a personal trainer and stuff. And so like that's a very practiced thing that now comes off the tongue very naturally. So you want to have something like that in your back pocket. You do, like in the same way that when you're working in a gym and you're trying to sell somebody a personal training package, you're going to have little scripts in your head that you've said a million times. It'd be like, all right, so we're going to go do a fitness assessment right now. Basically, all this is going to be is we're going to take you through a series of exercises and a series of activities that are going to put a certain amount of stress on the body. I'm going to observe you. We're going to see how much that stress affects you. And we're going to write a program based on that. Right. So you know, that's a version of a script that I've said a million times. Or it might be like, all right, next thing we're going to do is like a couple posture assessments. We're basically going to drive some of your joints through a full range of motion. And I'm going to look to see if there's any compensations. That's going to tell me what muscles need to be stretched and what muscles need to be strengthened. And then I can write your program based on that. Again, that's like a script that I have said a bajillion times, you know, especially when you're a new hire. You'll be doing nothing but assessments in your first, you know, couple weeks, like, because you're just trying to build your client base. So you're just throwing out free training sessions, like free assessments, like constantly. And that's you know, those scripts will slowly like form in your head and stuff. So doing that during an interview is also great. Just having those little scripts in there makes it very, very easy. It also gives the candidate a greater awareness of like what you can offer a potential employer. Like if you become more aware of like, you know, your own awesomeness and you know what your strengths are, it's going to be a lot easier for you to convey those to somebody else, you know? Everybody in here, start thinking about this now before you start actually job hunting. What is something that makes you uniquely qualified to be a good personal trainer? Like have that, start thinking about it, write it down, put it on, you know, put it on a sticky note on your computer monitor and ask yourself like, why am I great? You know, put that on there and just ask yourself that all the time. There's more to that, by the way. That's actually something that I think people should practice in general for other reasons. Those of you who have been through my exercise psychology class know that, you know, that's a little bit of like imagery work there. And also like cognitive behavioral therapy sort of blending together. But like, you know, being able to answer that quickly and efficiently, very, very important. Now, next thing you probably want to do is you want to practice your interview skills. And, this is always a little awkward. It's always a little weird to like ask your friends or your family, to like sit down with you and give you like a mock interview. But what's kind of great about that is like, that's honestly more awkward than any actual interview will be in the entire world. Like if I, even if we did it in class, we would occasionally do this practice. We'd practice this in class and we'd be like, all right, so let's go ahead and sit down and practice our interviews. It's just very odd to have to sit across from another person and play pretend as if you're doing like a job interview. That's so much more awkward than an actual real life interview ever will be. And yet we're all afraid of the real life interview. Like people are often so nervous going in interviews. But the reason this is great is because it gives you a chance to sort of review any of your anticipated questions. Like if you have been sort of taking a shot at what you think some of the questions are going to be, and we're going to talk about those. We'll see a lot of example questions at the very end of this PowerPoint. But you can go ahead and start getting little scripts in your head because you're going to start saying them more and more and more, So let's say we were grouped up in class and we switched around to like 5 different partners doing like little mock interviews. And let's say I started with Danny and then Julio and then Alexis. I sat down and each of you guys like asked me the same set of questions. And eventually, like what's going to happen is I'm going to get into a rut. I'm going to get into a script, which is going to make it very easy for me to answer without really having to think about what my answer is. If all 3 of you guys asked me, what's your favorite part of personal training? Something like that, which I actually have never seen that question before, but I think it'd be a good one. I'd probably say it's like, I love the tipping point moment that takes place in every session. Like that moment where somebody's like really exhausted and they're like not 100% certain they can do it. And then like they get over that hump and they succeed and they get so excited afterwards and they're exhausted, but they're like, I did it, oh my God, I'm going to die, but I'm living, like they have that moment where they're just, they push themselves beyond what they thought they were capable of. That is something that I really enjoy seeing in like new people every time. So that wasn't very well rehearsed. I've never really answered that question before, but if it was asked to me over and over and over again, eventually I'd find the shortest path to kind of convey that message in probably the most effective way, and if knowing me, I'd probably come up with 10 stories highlighting times that I've felt that way. So review any of the anticipated questions that you think you're going to be asked, rehearse your answers. It also gives you the opportunity to develop your own questions, which is kind of nice because like that gets your brain to think about things in a very different way. That's a super valuable skill, by the way. Just speaking of being distractible, one of the best ways to learn information, guys, is to learn it from the perspective of as if you are going to teach it to someone else later. It's actually one of the reasons why I think personal training information is kind of easy to absorb, is because you're probably going to have to explain some of this to your clients in non-scientific terms. You know what I mean? Like when we talk about like, and for my new folks, we haven't really gotten to energy systems yet. So we will get to energy systems, I promise. But you talk to your clients about like the difference between aerobic versus anaerobic training, and how it builds like type 1 or type 2A or type 2B muscle fibers, right? There's, sort of a difference there. I could explain it in scientific terms. I've heard it, I've read it, I've studied it in scientific terms, but I need to explain it to someone in terms that are going to make sure they don't fall asleep during their training session. This person can be on a treadmill and all of a sudden I put them to sleep and they're going to go shooting off the back. Like I don't want to do that. So I'd probably say it's like, well, when it comes to like developing muscle fibers, we sort of classify them based on how they look. So either they're going to be really large, which means they have a lot of like fluid in them, where they're relatively strong and they have a relatively good amount of endurance, or they're truly just like tightly packed, really strong muscles, but unfortunately don't have a lot of endurance. Or there's the version that has just like nothing but endurance, but doesn't really have like a lot of muscle fibers, and it's just not very like maximally strong. That's the difference between like your cardio fibers, your power fibers, and like your strength athletic fibers in the middle there. And so if I explained it that way, somebody goes, okay. And then they're like, well, I kind of want to focus on like that middle one, because like, I'm not trying to be the most powerful person in the world, but I'm also not trying to have nothing but endurance. I want to have some strength. And I'm like, sounds good to me. All right. Hypertrophy training it is, we're going to be working anywhere from, 6 to 12 repetitions, because that's going to target that type of muscle in particular. That's a very non-scientific breakdown, that translates very easily. So the same, that's what's going to happen. If you start to develop your own questions during an interview, you'll start to think of like new ways to kind of say answers that are a little more common, right? And then, guys, that's actually the key. Like in your notes, one of the reasons why, move my thing. One of the reasons why I always offer to print out your guys' notes for you is that I'm hoping that you will write in the margins. I hope that you guys are writing all over those pages that we print, and just put it in your own words. Just be like, it is essential to take a realistic assessment in terms of skills, ability, knowledge, and strengths and weaknesses. Great. Right down here in your own sentence, be like, it's really important for me to know who the heck I am and what I'm good at. You write that sentence down, that's what that translates to me, it probably translates a little bit differently to you. So that's a really good way to absorb information, by the way. Always study as if you are going to have to teach it later. That's the best tip I ever got while I was in college. That's the greatest tip I've ever received in my life. It just makes absorbing information so much easier. Okay, any questions so far? Speaking of questions and interviews.
Can you repeat that last thing you said, please?
Oh, yeah. Totally unrelated to the interview thing, but yeah, best tip I ever received in school. Always study from the perspective of, I will have to teach this to someone else later. So like, imagine you are studying for a lecture. Imagine if I'm sick for the day and I was like, Alexis, I need you to teach class for me on Monday. Here's all the materials. Go learn this, right? Practice it from like while you're reading it from the perspective of like, I need to remember this because I'm going to have to reiterate it later. I'm going to have to tell it to somebody else. That is the best study tip I've ever received. It just is a much easier way. And I actually have proof of that. Well, I say proof. Ironically, somebody told me that while I was in school, and then years later, ASAP Science did a video on it. Best way to study. How to learn faster, I think. Is it that one? Anyway, one of these, they do a lot of these videos because a lot of people are college students trying to learn stuff. I think it might be this cram one. I'm not sure. Anyway, they have it. One of their like tips, watch these videos, guys. Look up ASAP Science best way to study and watch all. They're all very, very short, except that one's 10 minutes. And they actually have like a link to a study where they asked people to do that, and they knows that they absorb information faster. Any other questions? I could talk about that all day, by the way. So we gotta move on, or I'm gonna get stuck here because I love talking about stuff like this. We have to talk about fashion next, which I don't love as much. Any other questions? No, you're feeling good. Okay. All right. So George, what do you wear? What the heck are we wearing to an interview, right? So here's what I'll say. I disagree with this PowerPoint slightly. and only because we're on the West Coast. But talk to anybody in the professional world. Talk to my girlfriend. She'll tell you. It's so funny. Like everything is very formal back east. Like personal training, you're going to an interview, wear a freaking suit, like straight up, you know, because back east is so, especially like, you know, in metropolitan areas, like if you're in New York, especially, like wear a suit, right? I don't really consider Chicago to be that far back east, but I'd probably say I bet that's about the same. It's really like a California thing. Now, that being said, I also don't want you guys to show up in like flip-flops and board shorts either. That's not that's not where we're going. So we're kind of going, we get a little bit of extra wiggle room. And that is something I have actually heard so many times from people who have like moved out here. Like my girlfriend, actually, I remember seeing on her dating profile, because we met on the apps. But I remember seeing that she was from the East Coast. And then like instantly my brain was like, all right, well, we're dressing up for this first date a little more than usual, you know? And sure enough, like I went dressed to the nines compared to how I normally do it. That first date was a train wreck, actually, but it worked out in the end. For me, at least. She's stuck with me. But so guys, here's what you want to wear. It says a suit in the PowerPoint. You can do that. I think it's a little over the top. Now, that being said, in certain circumstances, I would say that that's great. If you're going to like a country club that has a training staff, wear a freaking suit, you know, wear a suit and, you know, bring your butler, you know, like that's the type of members that they are, you know, working with. And so like, they want to see a trainer that can sort of live in high class society. But that's really like country clubs, really, really fancy gyms. Equinox, not part of that. Equinox is definitely like, you know, a little trendier, but that doesn't mean you go in for your interview in like a full suit. I think that's over the top. Instead, what we're going to focus on is that classic business casual, which I always found really hard to define. I'm like, what the heck is business casual? Slacks, dress shoes, and a shirt with buttons on it for our male clients here. This, not so much. Jeans, I know that like, yeah, we got really nice jeans out there. I've seen people show up in jeans. I think it can be pulled off, especially if you're just a really fashionable person, but I really don't recommend it. Every interview I've seen, that's sort of like a red flag. You're going to want to tuck your shirt in, you know, just because it shows that little bit of extra effort. But to me, this is like, I mean, lose the jacket. This is kind of a perfect example. I don't know. Those shoes are a little worn out, but I think like go with just like a classic, very simple example here. That's fine. Do you need a tie? Not necessarily. I like a tie in an interview personally. Just because ties are kind of a pain in the butt and everybody knows that. And so if they saw that I put the effort in, they know that I care, you know? So I like to wear a tie to my interviews, or at least I have for the last several years. So dress shoes, dress socks, holy crap. This is mostly for my younger guys. Do not wear white socks with black shoes. and like athletic socks, like we don't want to see your Under Armour logo popping through your slacks. So make sure that, yeah, you're kind of matching that correctly. Dress shoes, dress socks, slacks, or if you want to wear like suit pants, you can, but just like, you know, nice slacks are like a good one. There are some classy like chinos out there that sometimes people will wear. I don't have anything against those either because they kind of, you know, you can't really tell that they're not necessarily slacks. You do probably want to wear a belt because again, that's sort of part of the whole business casual situation. So you can see like most of these, actually that guy doesn't. Most examples, you know, wearing a belt. The guy carrying a purse, he's got a clutch. It's interesting. Yeah, these are all kind of good examples right here, actually. These are all very model-y. I wish I could just find like a non-model picture here on the internet, but Good luck. This is a good example. This is honestly probably my favorite. I'd say belt that up, tuck that shirt in, get rid. Actually, no, yeah, this one, definitely not this one, and definitely not these two, because you would die wearing that wool sweater in Los Angeles. But yeah, hopefully that gives you kind of a good idea of what we're talking about, right? Button down shirt, slacks, dress shoes. You do that. The tie is optional, but you're going to be in a good place. Make sure your hair looks good. Shave your face. There is kind of a weird thing in the training world. I will say, if you're going to a CrossFit gym and you are rocking like a mountain man beard, that actually probably would look pretty well. That's like a specific like fitness guy. I'm sure we all know who I'm talking about, like the power lifter, you know. He walks in there, you know, in his Converse. You're like, oh, he's gonna be a Converse lifter, and then he takes his shoes off entirely, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, we all know that guy. If you're applying for a job in a situation like that, that actually might serve you well, weirdly. But I will say, I usually keep like the little bit of like shadow that I kind of keep on my face most of the time. Whenever I interview, though, I go clean shaven, every single time. It again is just sort of an example of like, you know, being a little bit more traditional in like a gym setting, which in corporate settings is something they kind of look for. Guys, just because we are dressing up nice, but don't wear too much cologne. Oh my God. I've had this problem before. That's a deal breaker. No, I mean, George, yeah, you got the great beard. Again, I think there's room for it. I just don't, you know, if you're going into like an equinox, I don't know. I think they're pretty uptight and, you know, but I think the beard lends to it, you know. That guy looks like I swear, like, you know, the guys with the biggest beards are always also the strongest guys at the gym. But cologne, don't overdo it on the cologne. Holy crap. When I worked at Sochi and when I was doing, well, I'd still work at Sochi. When I was in charge of hiring at Sochi, for like, you know, when we had like a lot more instructors, and then when we opened up the North Hollywood location, my classroom was upstairs on the 5th floor, and I would have to go down to the 4th floor because that's where like our little lobby area was. And so I would always tell everybody, I'd be like, in the email, I'd be like, hey, we're going to meet up on the 4th floor. You're going to come right at the elevators. You'll see the front desk, ask them for the application, get it all filled out, and I'll come meet you afterwards. And that was like how I'd go meet people every time. And so I would normally take the stairs, but with an interview, like I would never want to presume. And so I'd always take the elevator instead. And I will never forget, like, just walking into this elevator with someone and being like, oh my God, Drakkar Noir. And just like my eyes were burning and like I couldn't breathe, you know, like we do not need that much cologne. You want to go with a little spritz, go for it. But like, yeah. Or like 10 pounds of Axe body spray. Don't do that. Don't do that for your interview. And then lastly, go with mostly solid colors. You know, you can see a lot of examples that we are seeing. Just a very simple like off-white shirt. You can go with white too. That's fine. My favorite go-to look for an interview is actually, this is something minus those shoes. I'd wear like dress shoes with that. Or this. These are really great examples right here. Take this plain shirt and put it on that, or take this shirt in blue and put it here minus the stripes. But I love gray slacks, brown shoes, black shoes. He's doing brown shoes. Black belt, and then like an off-white shirt, usually like light blue. That's like my go-to. Or I'll do like this, and then I'll do brown shoes. And that is about the end of my fashion knowledge. I'm actually way better at the interview than I am any other version at this point. So that's for our guys. I'm going to know a lot less about this, obviously. But I have taught this lesson enough times, and I've asked Miriam, our career services lady enough times to know how to answer this. So for ladies, it is very, very similar. However, there's a couple extra rules. It doesn't necessarily have to be like super dressy shoes, but it should be closed-toed shoes. It's just a little bit more conservative. So closed-toed shoes, go with like medium heels or flats. You don't have to go like super exaggerated heel. If we go like business casual women. If we take a look, actually, there's a lot of that's like, oh, it's a pantsuit. Never mind, that would work. But yeah, you can kind of see like a couple different examples here. Honestly, this is probably like one of the most common go-tos, right? Or something like this. You can do a skirt, you can do slacks. If you're doing a skirt, make sure that it's at least knee length. I know that that's like a rule that everybody kind of talks about. Belt is optional with the skirt, but mandatory for slacks. Obvious. I don't know why, but that is a sentence that Miriam sent me based on my notes. So trust her. I'm sure she knows what she's talking about. So yeah, belt is optional if you're doing the skirt option. And then again, keep it like a simple colored blouse. Probably button down is probably going to be your best bet. I'm trying to find, that's actually a very good example there too. If you do want to go with like a shawl or something simple over top, you can. Where is actually those slacks? Yeah, this is a really good example. This is a great like interview outfit that is still like relatively casual while also being like professional, right? So medium heels, closed-toed shoes, slacks, and a simple blouse. Just like guys, right? Slacks, button-down shirt, dress shoes, you know? So we're kind of following the same format here, right? Simple colored, guys. We don't need to go crazy with, patterns or colors or anything like that. It's a very dynamic tool, but like, you want to keep it relatively simple. For jewelry, same situation, relatively simple. Makeup, same situation, relatively simple. It doesn't have to be overly done in either of those. And then again, avoid too much perfume. That's another one. That's I would normally say, like, I think it's a little bit more common for perfume to be worn. So you would think that I would be saying it's like, oh man, I've definitely had some interviews where there's been too much perfume. But I've actually only, run into that maybe once or twice. Guys, on the other hand, too much cologne has killed me multiple times. So, and you guys have seen how much I sneeze normally. Imagine all the interviews over the years. So yeah, avoid too much perfume while you're doing that. Basically, Google business casual, get yourself an interview outfit, and keep it in your closet for situations like that. Actually, there's another. Actually, these are pretty good too, except I think this one's jeans. Yeah, so I'd probably get rid of that. Yeah, this is another really good option too, right? Like the collared shirt underneath, like a sweater, is always a good look. I actually don't know about this one because it's like, I don't know. I keep hearing like knee-length skirt. That's the thing that Miriam says every time. So to me, that seems important. So a little bit different for guys and girls there in terms of interviews. But again, guys, we get to keep it like business casual instead of like business conservative. Now, if we were on the East Coast, if any of you are planning on moving back if you're moving out of California, that's enough to say, maybe you go a little bit more conservative on things. That's, again, if you ever talk to my girlfriend, she's like, yeah, she's like, I moved to California and now suddenly my closet that is nothing but black doesn't fit anymore. She's like, now I get to wear color. But living in New York, it's like black and white. Like those are the dress colors, all right. So that's the clothing stuff. Hopefully that gave you guys a couple of good examples there. Colors are a really dynamic tool. You do want to make sure you can use it, but you don't want to make sure that you're going crazy there. Just a very simple, very simple color rather than like a big pattern. I've seen guys. I will say, like, I remember I had a younger guy come in. It was a decent enough interview, but he just didn't have the experience. Yeah, I think turtlenecks would be great. Yeah. I would say though, Eric, if you are going to do like maybe a turtleneck would probably cover up the collar entirely. I was going to say, like, have a collar popping out from the other side. Let me look. It's trendy. I probably wouldn't do an interview unless you got like a jacket over it. Actually, I take it back. I probably wouldn't do the turtleneck to an interview. If it's got a jacket, if you're doing like a blazer over it, I think you could get away with it. But to me, it doesn't scream. If you're gonna do like a sweater, I'd probably do it over like a collar, like over a collared shirt. Oh, actually, while I'm at it, speaking of collared shirts, long sleeve, guys. Long sleeve, not short sleeve. And you can roll them up, but again, that's a West Coast thing. But yeah, keep it collared up. But yeah, I had a young guy show up and he was wearing just like it was a nice flannel shirt. But I remember just being like, this guy looks like he's dressed for a date more than an interview. And I logged that away because I happened to be in this class at the time. And I was like, I'm going to talk about this when I get it back to class. I don't think I'll ever forget that guy now. Would have loved it. He was actually a nice enough kid, but he was way too green to be teaching personal training. Well, teaching it to trainers. All right. So that's the dress code stuff. Final preparations as you are getting ready for your interview. Make sure you guys lay out your clothes the night before so you don't have to stress out about that in the morning, or at least know exactly what you're going to wear to your interview. Again, this is why, like, for me, I have like the same like business casual outfit that I wear to like everything. I've got 3 slacks, 3 button-down shirts, and 3 ties, and they can go in any combination. That makes it very, very easy for me. And I got 1 pair of brown shoes and 1 pair of black shoes. Very modular. So that if you have something like that, you probably don't have to worry too much about it, but generally lay all that stuff out ahead of time, including like all of your papers. So guys, before you go to your interview, bring another copy of your resume. Yes, you already uploaded the resume. I know. If you have the opportunity to print the application, like if you did the application online and it has an option to print it and bring it with you. Bring it with you to your interview. They're already going to have all that. Like a good interviewer will print your resume and print your application, and like they'll be looking at it during the interview so that they can like ask questions off of it. But what often happens in an interview, I'd say 90% of the time, is that somebody else is going to be invited along because you'll probably be interviewing under like a middle manager. So like, let's say you're interviewing for a gym at Gold's, right? You're interviewing at Gold's, right? Chances are you are going to go to your interview under the training manager, but they will often invite the general manager to come along and sit in on the interview just so like that they feel like they are involved, and then they might have like some unique questions. They'll sometimes bring the operations manager, or they'll just bring a second person into the interview so they can get like a fresh set of eyes so they have someone to talk with, even though they're the ones making the decision. And those people will not have an extra copy of your resume and an extra copy of your application, your references sheet, even your cover letter. I like to bring my cover letter as well. I think that's a little overdoing it, but I like to have it. And I will keep extra copies of those things with me during the interview. and I will hand those to that second person. And it's like, oh, you're the prepared one. That's right. I remember you now. Like that's the identity you want to have, right? So set your resume, your cover letter, your references sheet aside to where you can find them the next day easily, quickly, and efficiently. And one other thing you guys can do, put all of them in a portfolio. Everybody buy a freaking portfolio. That one's $7. You don't need that one even. That's overdoing it a little bit. These things are $2. Don't get the big bright colorful ones. Go get like a really simple, just easy one. But just a very, I can't actually, oh, come on. 20 bucks. Yeah, there we go. $2. $2. Go get one. That's where you keep all your papers. That way, when you are nervous, you are not doing this thing on the day of your interview. No. We all do it. Don't do it. Put it in your portfolio so that you can protect yourself from yourself. So do all that and then map out your commute. I think it says print a map in the PowerPoint, if I remember right. Oh, maybe not. But map out your commute. Just know what your friggin' thing is, so you don't get stressed. I mean, like me, people are surprised sometimes when they hear this, but I have a tremendous temper when I'm driving because I just get very frustrated. And so like I need to make sure that like I show up to places and I plan to be there 30 minutes early. That's overdoing it by a long shot. That is for my own mental crazies. For you guys, I recommend 15 minutes. But what's that military phrase? It's if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. I think is what they say. That's a good approach.
If you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. That's the actual version. Yeah. So yeah, try to show up early, but make sure you know what your commute is. Because if I plan to be somewhere, like I went to a Dodger game a couple weeks ago and we left 90 minutes early and still missed the first 2 innings, and I was going insane. Not that it's that big a deal. It's baseball. You can miss a couple innings, but I just couldn't believe that 90 minutes early was not enough. So, just plan for that. Do the research you need to do. All right. So that's honestly a lot of the information that's going to get you a lot of the way. You do most of everything we've talked about until now. If we wrap this up, you'd probably be in a pretty good spot. But I do want to talk a little bit more about like the different types of interviews that are out there. This will move a little bit quicker. But there are different types that you're going to run into. So a screening interview is something that probably all of you are going to have. I say probably 100%. Every one of you is going to have a screening interview at some point. A screening is different than an interview. When someone calls you and is like, hey, I saw you applied for this position, they don't have like all the extra materials. They aren't even planning on giving you like a full interview, but they might say something like, do you have a few minutes to talk? That's a screening. It's not an interview, but it is questions. Think of it like an interview, This is sort of an initial type of interview. And it's used to make the initial contact, get to know you a little bit. And then they're probably, they're going to call you in no matter what. Like if they took the time to call you, that will end, that call will end in, all right, well, we're going to book you for this time. But you want to make a good first impression in their head so they can look forward to like meeting with you in particular, right? So they're making initial contact with you. Sometimes that will be done by like an assistant or like assistant manager at a gym. Sometimes that'll happen and then you won't necessarily be talking to that person. But again, remember the assistant manager might sit in on the interview. So you still want to make a really good first impression here. This is usually just a conversation over the phone though. So keep it brief, keep it concise, say a couple things about yourself, and then just make sure you get all the details that you need about parking, about like what the commute's going to be like, what time the interview is, things like that. And on that one, by the way, guys, don't be afraid to like don't overbook yourself on that. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. Is they're like, hey, so we want to bring you in. How does Tuesday at 10 a.m. sound? And like you're getting off work at 9:30. Don't say yes to that interview. No way. Be like, hey, can I get something? Like, yeah, theoretically, it might be possible for you to like bring clothes to work with you, and then like you can change and then go straight there. But you don't want to do that on the day of your interview. You guys, you can ask for a specific time. Be like, are there any other time slots available? Actually, I'm a little busy at that time. To me, that indicates somebody who's very professional and aware of their schedule, and that's, I look for that in an employee, it's not, I don't want the job, which is sort of, I think, what a lot of people assume that they think that means. There's also panel interviews. Panel interviews we don't run into very often. Panel interviews are very weird. It's where basically like a bunch of people will line up and they'll each ask you questions as they sort of come to themselves. So like this is where like you're being hired by committee more than you're being hired by an individual. Not very common in a lot of gym settings. However, I will say Sochi kind of did that to me a little bit. I got hired by a guy named Greg. And he brought Jessica, who's still at Sochi. Jessica's the one who did your guys' orientation. So Jessica came and sat in, and then like I think Amy sat in, or maybe Amy sat in my second interview. But like Amy came in there as well, like, and then like Debbie, one of the other like teachers, came in and sat. I remember being like, why are there 5 people in this room? Like, and I think it was because it was like teaching, I had to do a 30-minute lecture. Actually, it was a very unique interview. But like it was weird, like, but that's like a panel thing, and they each ask different questions, kind of pinged back and forth. So the number of individuals in a panel interview is going to be different depending on where you go. I don't think you're going to see them in a lot of gym settings. One-on-one interview is probably the most common. This is probably what you've been picturing in your head the whole time. This is just you meeting with the hiring manager, right? Good opportunity for you to build rapport. Again, like this is an opportunity for you to show off how personable you can be, which is big in our industry. Just the little show off your personality. To try to stay focused on, I know that sometimes I get a little unfocused when I do that, a little bit too much, but try to stay focused on like the task at hand, but don't be afraid to like, throw a couple curveballs their way. During one-on-one interviews, I love to answer, like, I find where do you see yourself in 5 years? I find that question to be also very cliche. I'm tired of hearing it at this point in my career. And best answer to that question, by the way, where do you see yourself in the future? Best way to answer that is not so much like, oh, I hope that I'm making like steady income and working as a trainer in 5 years. Best way to interview that is like, well, hopefully in 5 years time, I've worked myself into, probably like a leadership role, some type of like managerial position. Saying something like that shows that you have a growth mindset. And that you are not going to leave this company quickly. Again, remember, this interviewer hates giving interviews. It gums up their day, it eats their time, and they still have to do all of their regular job. They want to hire you, and they want to not hire anybody else ever again. So if you can say something of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you can answer that with like, hopefully on like a managerial track, where I'm climbing like a ladder and setting myself up for a long-term career instead of just saying a job. Super great answer to that question. Also, you could go with my favorite answer to that, which is always a weird one. But I always like to sometimes like I'll throw like a really weird curveball just as a joke and then like diffuse it afterwards. I'll say something goofy like well, hopefully on a beach in Hawaii, because I haven't been there yet, or I'll say something like goofy like that. I'm like, no, I'm kidding. Like, hopefully I will be in a role where I can take vacation time effectively in the future. Maybe not my best example, but like that's a very fun curveball that everybody can identify with. And they're like, oh, that's a funny answer. Don't do too many of those. And then there are just like straight telephone interviews. I mean, I had a couple students like had to practice for Zoom interviews. That's getting more and more common nowadays. Now that everybody's social distancing. But telephone interviews are getting more and more common. Now, here's what's weird about this, guys. I think I put this in the notes. Yeah, if you are doing a Zoom or telephone interview, treat it like a in-person real interview. I know this is weird, and I know there's all these jokes about Zoom and how people are like, they get up and all of a sudden they're wearing like, they got like a dress suit up here and like basketball shorts down here. I know that is funny. Yeah, sure. I'm fine with that. Don't do it during an interview. Dress up for your interview fully and like be committed. Don't try to get, there is something about like the nonverbal communication. There is something about like you will perform better. I promise. If you fully dress up. And then minimize the distractions. Try to get yourself into an empty room. If you got the cat in your room and that cat's like coming to lay on your keyboard while you're doing like a Zoom interview, out of the room. Like if your dog's barking, try to minimize the distractions. Turn your phone off or at least on silent. All the classic stuff you would do. Treat it as if it's a in-person real interview. Same thing if it was just a phone call too. Try to find yourself like a spot. I tend to be like a walker when I'm on the phone. I like to kind of wander around in circles. You can do that a little bit, but generally we're going to recommend like sit upright, just like you would during a real interview. It's like, oh, not slouching my shoulders. Can they hear you slouching your shoulders over the phone? I'm going to say yes to that question. I mean, obviously they can't hear the slouching, but like they can hear, there's something about the tone of voice. There's something that's different. And everybody has said this. I didn't just hear this the first time in this PowerPoint. Like this is a very common thing they will say. And if that many people say it, it's got to be true. So dress up, stand still, Oh, and the nice thing about being at home though, you can take notes. So that's kind of cool. That way you can come back to questions that they asked you and answer those more specifically. Last little considerations of notes here before we sort of finish up the PowerPoint part. Again, arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. I will say, don't arrive too early. This is a common mistake. This is something that used to give me a lot of anxiety when I was like hiring at Sochi. So we would have class and then I would always make my room available for an extra hour after class. In case people wanted to stick around and do like homework or if, and I would be bouncing in and out of that room all the time between that and the gym. So I would like be around. And so like, I always wanted to have that environment. So I'd always book my interviews for 1 hour after I was finished with class. And that way there was an hour buffer and people would show up like 30 minutes early and I would get paged by the front desk and they'd be like, hey, Brad, your interview's here. And I'd be like, they're 30 minutes, and it would kind of annoy me a little bit. I wish it didn't. I wish that I were big enough and like, to say, no, that's great. I'm nothing but impressed. But no, I'm cynical. And I was like, girl, you're sucking away my time because you're early. That's a very weird reaction to that. But show up early. It's appreciated. But probably, maybe if you're really early, guys, sit in your car and just prep for your interview even further. Walk through that gym door 5, maybe 10 minutes early. That's the perfect window. Wait patiently. Don't hound the person at the front desk. I see people do. I've never experienced that, but I've seen people do it all the time in times that I've worked in gyms. Is like they're sitting there like schmoozing, and the front desk person's like, you know, like here's a sixth person to do this today, you know. So don't do that. During your interview or during the initial meeting, when you run into your, you know, person, they're like, hi, and they give you the handshake and stuff. Firm handshake, maintain eye contact, make some small talk, but try to maintain as much professionalism as possible, you know. Hey, if you know they're a big Dodger fan and the Dodgers just won a game last night, cool, bring it up. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not in the initial interview yet, you know. Maybe don't talk about that in the middle of like the job interview part. But you want to talk about it like leading up? Yeah, I think it's great. You know, it's personable, it's small talk. You're building rapport right out the get-go, and that's what we want to see. Okay, so now we got a bunch of different examples of interview questions. But before we do, for you guys, any questions or comments? Any of that confusing so far? Nothing. Okay. All right. Let's look at our interview questions. Here's a lot of them you're gonna get. There, you want to try to anticipate these. Again, you know, practice with your friends and family. Look up common interview questions on the internet. You know, that's why everybody asks the same ones. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? Ugh, everybody asks those. I hate those questions personally, but like they're common. So we want to know how to answer them. So first category, personal questions. A lot of times they'll ask you like, why do you want this job? The obvious answer is because I want to pay my rent. You know, that is not the answer you should give during your interview though. Remember, you have done your research. You know about this gym at this point. What makes this gym unique? What makes you unique, right? That's why you want to answer that. That's how you want to answer that question. So like when I was interviewing at Sochi, the reason I want this job in particular because I've worked in fitness, and like throughout my whole career, people have always told me that I tend to be pretty good at explaining things, and I really enjoy giving people a deeper understanding of simple concepts. So if I can take something that's very complex for someone and break it down and make it a little bit easier and for them to absorb, I feel really good about myself and I feel really good about what I'm doing. So I want to work in an environment where I get to do that. So that's I think what I said some version of that for my Sochi interview. When I interviewed for Biggest Loser, they were like, why do you want this job? I remember I was just getting into groups exercise at that point in my career. Like I just started doing boot camps and stuff. And so I said something along the lines of like, well, I really enjoy making people feel better. You know, I got into personal training because I told you the story that I told you guys earlier about, I noticed that I make people feel better, and that's what I actually enjoy. The idea that I get to do that with a large group of people, I think you guys, and I think I had done my research, and I was like, you guys are working with like 80 people a week. That means that I get to have a bigger impact on the world. And that is something that really excites me, you know? So I said something along the lines of that. If I was interviewing for somewhere like Equinox, I would probably say something along the lines of like, well, I like to be, you know, I tend to be kind of a fitness nerd. I really like being on like the cutting edge of things. And like, I think Equinox is like a really good opportunity where you guys have a lot of modern equipment and you're taking a very modern approach to like fitness. And that's something that like I am also focused on. So I think I'd be a really good fit here, you know? So do your research, know the industry, know where you're applying, and try to match like your why to that, right? Talk about yourself. You can say something, you know, you can fill in questions about yourself, right? They might ask you some personal questions like, what are your hobbies? You know, sometimes they'll do icebreaker questions. I think the best interviewers actually do this. They'll do a couple icebreaker questions in the beginning that are just like about your hobbies and short and long-term goals. Love stuff like that. You know, I'll any opportunity to talk about ultimate frisbee, I'm going to talk about it, you know, like, so, you know, that's one of my biggest like interests. Short-term goals, I'll even talk about other things that I'm kind of passionate about. I'll be like, you know, my goal right now is also like, I'm working on like my, you know, an investment property. That's really exciting. because I've never had a chance to do that before. I'd love to have, I'd love to be in a place where I have enough passive income to survive and like pay all of my bills, while then like personal training becomes this thing that like I'm really passionate about, that is like, almost like a side hustle, because a lot of times you're more passionate about your side hustles than you are about the real gig. So if I can get to a place where like passive income is my real gig, and like I can just train people for fun and work with as many people as possible without the stress of like having to deal with that. That sounds really exciting to me. That's kind of where I want to end up in the end. It's like, that's a very honest answer. So a lot of different questions out here, right? And, how did you become interested? What motivates you? What are 3 words that describe you? I hate that question, actually. But like 3 words that describe you, right? I would say, like me, I'd be like talkable, or talkative, I should say. Talkative, distractible, and energetic. I'd say those are 3 words that kind of describe me pretty well. Let's see here. Accomplishments that give you greatest satisfaction. That's kind of a fun one. So you can talk about like things that are exciting in your life that you've accomplished. And then they'll say, what are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? Just be honest there, guys. Don't be afraid to like lay out one of your greatest weaknesses. Like I put that in my 3 words that describe me. I think I'm very distractible. I'm very easily distracted. And that's great because like, it means that like I tend to be pretty good at multitasking. So it's also like one of my greatest strengths, but sometimes I take on a few too many projects at once. So there's a really like honest answer to that. Somebody hears that and they're gonna be like, all right, well, they didn't say they're, napping all day. They didn't say their greatest weakness is that they're late for everything. It's like, oh, this is a person who works too hard. I can appreciate that on some level. That's kind of what they're looking for in an employee. So to me, I like that answer. It's honest without sounding like a humble brag. Again, don't do like, oh, I'm too good at training my clients, right? Like, oh God. No humble brags, guys. No humble brags. Sometimes you'll get philosophical questions. Philosophical questions are usually like what's your philosophy on, and then whatever thing, right? So let's talk about like, what's your philosophy on like youth training, right? Or what's your philosophy when it comes to like training? So like I got this question at Biggest Loser and was told that I was a very weird interview later because I was a little combative actually when I asked this question. But they're like, what's your philosophy on fitness? And I was like, well, I don't really believe in like yelling or negative reinforcement when it comes to like group fitness. I think that's very common for like a lot of boot camp instructors to get very boot campy. And I think that other people can pull that off really well. But if that's who you're looking for, that's probably not me. And they were like, are you trying to get this job? So I came off pretty strong on that one. But my philosophy is like, I like to yell and get excited and have a loud voice for energy purposes. I do not like to use it to, push someone out of their comfort zone. And don't get me wrong. I think like getting somebody out of their comfort zone is actually very important, but I don't like to push them out of it. I like to lead them out of it. And so that's a very different approach for me. So that's a philosophy thing. That being said, I know so many boot camp instructors who are like the drill sergeant type who are like, let's go. And they get people in great shape and people love it. If you're listening to this and that's who you think you're going to be, awesome. I fully support you. It's just not my personal approach. Different strokes. So yeah. You'll get a couple philosophical type questions there. You'll also get some knowledge-based questions. These are the ones that you guys are going to crush it on, but a lot of these are like related to like direct examples of things. So they might say something like, are you familiar with using like a POS software? Now that one, you're probably not going to be super familiar with right out the get-go. But I can tell you most POS software is pretty much the same amongst every gym. Like they'll all have their own software. Like Gold's will have a program that some Gold's hired somebody to make, and LA Fitness had their version that they hired somebody to make. But if you get to know like mind body, or even just like, there's, let's see here, free session booking software, personal trainers. There's one or two out there, that Zen Planner. Yeah. This one here is like My PT Hub's another one, actually. I know both those. This is a little thing where you can actually just like have it and book your appointments into it, and then you can see your schedule and visit that all the time. You get familiar with this, you're kind of familiar with all of them, honestly. So it actually makes it very easy for you to kind of book yourself and book your sessions and stuff, and charge people. You can keep, information in there. They'll ask you if you're familiar with that. If you're not familiar with that, that's okay, by the way. A lot of you guys haven't necessarily worked in training just yet. So if you say something like, well, not yet, but I'm very good with computers, or, app-based stuff, that's fine. That's a good enough answer. They might say something like, what steps in developing a youth, this says arts and crafts, we'll say fitness program. They might ask you questions directly about like, what would you do if your client exhibits knees caving in? They might have you write a program. Equinox loves to do that. Equinox does that in their interviews all the time. For the record, they do group interviews at first for the first round. They bring in a ton of people on one day. They do like a big group interview, and then they'll ask them to like build a program. This can go poorly, by the way. I got one example story for one of our graduates at Sochi who didn't get the job at Equinox because they knew more than the manager did. That is absolutely true. Like they were like, what would you do for this client? And it was somebody who had like, what was it? They have really bad hypertension. I think is what it was. So you had a client with high blood pressure. How do you train them? And it's like, well, we're gonna probably focus on like a little bit of endurance and weight loss. And then he built like a core program. And he put, I can't remember what abdominal exercise he chose, but he picked like a balancing standing core exercise. And the person was like, I would have liked to see like a plank in there or something like that, something stabilization, isometric based. And if for those of you who remember going through special populations before this mod started, you'll remember we don't do isometric holds with hypertension clients because it can raise their blood pressure. And so he knew that. Now, if you know more than your interviewer, do not point that out to the interviewer. This is where things went awry. He was like, oh, well, I've always read that like isometrics are really bad for hypertensive clients. So I decided to go with a different core exercise. And the manager got a little like red in the face and apparently like a little embarrassed. So don't do that. Just if they say something like that, take the note and be like, okay, yeah, I can see that. And just move on. Do not show up your interviewer. He would have been a great, I mean, I don't know. I think he would have done well at Equinox, but this student also was already like a pretty fairly established trainer, had a lot of hard opinions on things. Equinox is not looking for people who have hard opinions. They're looking for people who are moldable. So yeah, maybe Jake wouldn't have fit in too well there. Situational questions, you'll run into these. These are usually workplace scenarios. These are weird questions. You're going to know exactly how to answer these based on what they're trying to say. Like I got one of these one time, which was like, hey, and this is in a gym, by the way, which did not have vending machines. So I don't know why this was their example. This is a job that I was offered that I chose not to take, thank God. But they were like, okay, you see your coworker go over to the vending machine and they try to get like a bag of chips, but it gets stuck in the thing, and then they shook the machine to get that bag of chips. What do you do? And I was like, I know you want me to, what they want you to say is like, oh, I'm going to go inform my manager because like, you know, the real life answer is like nothing. I'm going to go on living my life is what I'm going to do. You know, like this is that person's business. You got cameras if you're that worried about it, you know, like, but I knew the answer they were looking for. You know, the answer they were looking for is like, you know, you see one of your fellow coworkers swearing on the gym floor, you know, dropping curse words. What are you going to do? You're going to go tell a manager. They're situational questions, right? So you'll get those sometimes. They sound more like situational questions. 9 out of 10 times. Then you'll get these weird ones. They love. I don't see these anymore, but I remember these were really popular when I first. They ended up like in all the interviews that I had when I was younger. Think on your feet questions. These are weird ones. So these are the ones that are literally meant to catch you off guard. They're just trying to see if you can talk on your feet and be personal. There's no correct answer here, but they might say like, "Who's your favorite cartoon character?" You know, and you're like, you know, like Bugs Bunny, I guess, you know, because he's a rascal. That like you can just answer. They're just like meant to be like weird questions. Like compare yourself to a thumbtack. If you were an animal, who would you be and why? I gotta say, one of my favorite ones. I've never had this in an interview, but if I ever get to do an interview again, I might ask this. If you could have a lame superpower, so no flight, no teleportation, not super strength, you can't have any cool traditional abilities, but you could have kind of like a weak superpower, what would it be? Mine would be to pick the fastest lane at the grocery aisle every time for the rest of my life. If I could just have that superpower, my life would be 5% better. You know?
Turn into water.
What's that, Amber?
Turn into water.
Turn into water? That could be a pretty tough one. Yeah, that's a good one. That'd be fun. Yeah, I like that. My roommate, my roommate had a really good one. He was like, I wish that I could have like a sense of smell as good as like, I think he said like a shark. Because sharks can like smell like one particle in a million. And I was like, all right, that's kind of cool, you know? But then again, I was like, isn't that also a curse though? Like you're just like there's a lot of garbage in the world, you know? Like, you walking down the street on garbage day, you're gonna be struggling. But yeah, so that's kind of a fun think on your feet question. You know, you get these like really weird ones.
What about the phobia for bugs?
Oh yeah, you'd just be able to get over it. That'd be
yes. You remember that day about the roaches there?
Oh, I sure do. Yeah, very much so.
That would be my thing, really.
Yeah, just be able to like remove that.
Because
that'd be great.
I love nature, and the only thing is bothering me these bugs. Like, yeah.
That's a good one. I like it. So yeah, you'll get like these weird ones. If you're stuck on a deserted island and you can only have one album to listen to for the rest of your life, what album would you listen to? What CD would you listen to? You know, I'd probably go with the Beatles one because it's got like 28 tracks on it. So you'll get like kind of some weird fun questions like that on there. Closing questions, these are usually the ones that are like just summarizing everything you've talked about for the day, and they're just seeing like, you know, giving you one last opportunity to state why you would be like a really good fit in whatever job it is you're applying for. So they might ask you why you should hire you over someone else. That's another question. That's a cliche that I kind of hate. You know, which whenever I answer that, they're like, why would I hire you over any of the other candidates? Why do you think you're the best candidate? Something like that. They're looking for you to, you know, brag about yourself. What is your, you know, and it's just a rehashing of the same question of like, you know, what are your goals? Who are you in this interview, right? So like for me, a good way to answer that closing question is just like, well, I imagine you want somebody who's like very dedicated and passionate about like working with the population that you've got here. And I'm definitely excited about the prospect of, and I would say whatever, you know, is unique to that gym. So I'd turn it back around on them. And then, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me, or do you have any questions for me? So questions for the interviewer. Guys, come up with a couple questions that you want to ask during your interview. It makes you seem like you are doing your research still, which again is a quality that a lot of hiring managers are looking for. And it gives you a little bit of like power at the end of the interview, and your question might be something that sticks in their mind later on. So come up with a couple questions that you can ask the interviewer yourself. Think of interview questions that you want to ask, right? So you might say something about like, what does the typical schedule look like? This is one of my favorites. This is a great question to ask. What process is used to evaluate employee performance? That's a good one, because now what you care about is like, you're like, how do I, how to become employee of the month? How do I get promoted to be a manager? How do I get promoted to be a regional director? You know what I mean? Like, you want to know, or like you might even ask like, what does the chain of command look like? What's the chain, the structure here? Are there opportunities for corporate advancement? That's a really good answer, or a good question to ask, because like it again shows that you have a growth mindset. And again, they just want to hire you, and they never want to hire anybody else ever again. So if you can ask a question about like, how do I stay here for a long time? Love that. And then another really good one is, without asking about pay, do not ask what the salary is in the interview. Salary conversations should be saved for the job offer. When you get offered, that's where you have time to negotiate. And by the way, you don't get what you deserve when it comes to pay, guys. You get what you negotiate for. So don't be afraid to like ask for more. That is how pay works in this world. You don't get what you're worth. You get what you negotiate for. How many people have you known who are making more than they're worth? How many people do you know who make less? Sorry, my favorite question that everyone should ask. Oh, it is pay related. You can ask about redemption bonuses and commission bonuses. Those are separate bonuses that are more commonly in gyms. It used to be just commission bonuses were around for a long time. But the problem with a commission bonus only job is that like you get bonuses for selling lots of personal training. You still need to churn through those sessions. So like if you sell a ton of training, but you have all these clients and you can't book enough sessions to burn through them, your next month, you're not going to get a commission bonus because you're training all the people you sold last time. Maybe you sold them for 6-month packages, right? Imagine every client who walks through the door, you book 40 hours a week worth of appointments and every one of them was 6 months. You're not going to be able to do any sales for the next 6 months. Now that will never happen. That scenario will never occur. But if it did, right? So what gyms started realizing was that they needed to have like a different structure as well to incentivize people to burn through sessions more. There are also redemption bonuses. Redemption bonuses are for working a certain number of hours, you get a bonus. And so if you can ask about that and be like, does this company have, do you guys have commission and redeeming bonuses? Right? That's a really good, knowledgeable question to ask. Because a redeeming bonus is, basically what you want to do is you want to flip-flop back and forth. You want a commission bonus on this paycheck, you want a redeeming bonus on the next one. Commission bonus, redeeming bonus. You just want to bounce back and forth between those two states. And that's how you're going to maximize your paychecks. Illegal questions. We already talked about this yesterday. They are not allowed to ask you about your race, your religion, your ethnicities, your citizenship, your marital status, your family status, your health, disabilities, sexual preferences, criminal record, non-professional affiliations. Ugh, they're not allowed to ask any of those. If they do, don't feel like you have to answer them. Honestly, if they do ask you those questions, get out of there. Like that means that manager's an idiot. You don't want to work for that person anyways. Everybody knows these questions are illegal. So like if those questions come up, to me that's a huge red flag. I'm like, well, I'm not working for you, bye. But yeah, if they do ask that, just refuse to answer it. Just be like, sorry, and move on. Now, after the interview is over, you want to send a thank you email or a thank you note afterwards. Oh, that's another question you can ask, by the way, during the question you can ask to the interviewer. You can ask, when are you going to be reaching out? How many, how much longer is the entire interview process? Things like that. So you just know when the job offer is going to be coming through, because chances are you're job hunting elsewhere as well. That's an okay question to ask. After the interview, send a thank you email or a follow-up letter, right? Now, that does not need to be the same day. Like, don't get to the parking lot and be like, this isn't like a date. They're like, had a great time tonight. No, don't send that. Just send a thank you maybe 2 to 3 days later. That's a really good way to do it. And if it's on the weekend, wait till Monday. For me, send it in the middle of the day too. I don't know. People tend to reply to their emails more if they're after like 10 a.m. Second interviews. If you do get that second interview, a lot of times gyms honestly usually just do one big interview. Equinox does it different. But yeah, corporate gyms are usually just like you get your one interview and then they decide whether or not to hire you. But if you do get a second interview, it means that it's been narrowed down to you and a couple other folks. So you're going to get some more specific questions. This is going to be very job specific stuff on the second round. What they'll ask you is like, this is, and like, they'll ask you like what your schedule looks like. They'll ask you like when your availability is. All the questions that like an employer needs to know, rather than just the general questions of like, are you going to be a good trainer or not? And that's it. That's kind of how the whole process is going to go, guys. Just be prepared to answer a lot of these questions. Best way to do that is to, hop online and common interview questions and just get used to answering those. Here's an infographic. That's easy to read. Get used to answering those. Practice with your friends and family, and memorize you're the one who wrote your resume. So memorize the crap out of it. And that way, if you ever get a question asked to you about something on that page, you'll know how to answer it right away. And that timed out really well. All right, guys. Questions, comments, concerns? How's everybody doing?
I have a question. Can you say more about the pay stuff, like the commission that you were talking about? Like what kind was it?
Yeah, so the way like a commission bonus works. So let's see here. Let's see here if I can find like a no, that's not what I want. I'm trying to find like a visual aid while I'm talking about this. I'm not quite finding one. So the way a commission bonus will work, right? What'll happen is like if you sell, let's say $5,000 worth of personal training, you might get like a 5% bonus on your check, right? So like you might make your normal commission of whatever percentage that is, and then you'll get like a 5% bonus added to that for your paycheck. It's not your total paycheck plus 5%. It's like all the commission part of your paycheck. Let's say you've got like, $600 worth of commission coming in, they'll give you a 5% bonus. If you sell $10,000 worth of training, you might get a 10% bonus, right? So that's what a commission bonus is. It's based on how much training you sell. A redeeming bonus is based on, so the way money works in gyms, it kind of works like this. Imagine you've got two separate jars here, right? And what happens is when somebody buys training, so like somebody purchases training, that money is like the gym has taken that money and it will go into this jar right here. But this jar over here is the redeemed jar, right? And what that means is like these are sessions that somebody purchased and has now burned through. And so what will happen is they're going to pay you your hourly rate out of that. The money is going to go from the purchased over to the redeemed jar. So like the reason gyms do that is because like, let's say, Marsha, let's say you purchase $10,000 worth of personal training. I train you for 3 sessions and then you move to Alaska, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I want a refund. Now, usually there'll be like some clause in the contract that says no refunds, you know, most of the time. But if gyms are worried about like dealing with that and they are going to refund it, they need to make sure that they didn't spend the money. So what they'll do is they keep it in here until the session gets trained. So they can't spend any of that money that you actually like your gym has that money, but they can't spend it. So what they'll do is they wanted to incentivize trainers to whip through those sessions as fast as possible, encourage their clients to train more. So that way the money gets moved from this account to this account, and then they can spend it on whatever they need to spend it on, you know, and your hourly rate comes out of that. You know, let's say you make, you know, $30 per session, right? So you're getting like 30 an hour for all your sessions. Now, let's say you work 20 hours in a week, you're probably not going to get a redeeming bonus. You work 25 hours in a week, probably not going to get a redeeming bonus. 30 though, you might get like a 5% pay bump. And then like, you know, 40 hours a week, you might get a pay bump. You go overtime, you might get a pay bump, you know, because they don't have to worry about overtime. You're a commission job. So you don't get overtime rate. You just get your session rate.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
By the way, guys, this is totally how you should do your for those of you who are going to be your own trainers, you should do this. Open 2 accounts and throw the debit card from one of them away. Trash can, no, not cut it up, burn it, do it, get rid of it. So you cannot spend money from here. You do not want to spend money from here, because what happens if you get a client who buys $1,200 worth of training, you know, and you're like, great, that's awesome. Your rent's, let's say your rent's $1,000 a month, right? You know, that's fine. But now you also, it's like, but I have all this $1,200. I've already got my rent covered. I'm gonna go buy a new TV, right? So now you spend all the money from here. You have to train that client through all of those sessions, and you're not getting paid an hourly rate. You already got paid, you know? So you have to like burn through that $1,200 like hourly. What I recommend you guys do is total up your training sessions per week and move and pay yourself on a weekly basis and move that money from here to here. So like if you, let's say you charge, I'm just going to do, we'll say $50 a session to keep the math kind of easy. And you've got, let's say you sold, so you charge $50 per session. Yep. And total sessions sold. Let's say you sold 50 sessions, right? So that is going to be 50 times 50, you know, $2,500 that's going to go into this account. So $2,500 is going to be deposited into this account. But let's say, you know, each of those clients is only training twice per week, and it was 4 different people. So that's 8 sessions. So total sessions trained is going to be 8, right? So 8 times 50 is $400. So you should move, you know, you should take 400 out of here and move it over here. And that's how you want to do that. That way you ensure that you're not like overdoing it. I don't know why I put this down here. This should be up here.
That makes sense.
That is a really good way to keep yourself safe, because I've made that mistake before. Like when I first got my boot camp off the ground, I was like, great, I'm gonna go buy more boot camp stuff, make my boot camp better, which is awesome in theory. But then I realized I have to burn through all those sessions, you know, and you're not able to sell anymore while you're doing that. So, yeah, you don't want to run into a situation where you spend money that and don't have any more money coming in. Any other questions, guys? That was a good one.
Oh,
Good.
really?
All right. We'll talk more about pay tomorrow, by the way. We're going to get into determining how to make the money you guys. We're going to talk about like how to make your salary, you know? So that'll be tomorrow's lesson.
I mean, for me, it's really like what I'm looking for in general. It's like motivating more people like is overweight. That's kind of be my concern, like, because there's so many out there that because they are a little bit overweight, they don't even go to gym or they don't even do anything. So
sure,
you know, like one of the questions that you said, it's like they asking you in the interview, like, why you using to become a personal trainer, or why you doing this, or why that's going to be like a good thing. You think that's going to be good for saying that? Like, why?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, if you're like, hey, what's important? I want to work with people who are trying to lose weight and get in the best shape, because like, and that if that's the case, then you want to find a gym that's looking for that. If you walked into Planet Fitness with that sentence, like, they'd hire you on the spot, because their whole thing is built around this idea of like, see you, Daryl. Bye, Amber. Actually, let me kill the recording here real quick.